The forests of the American North have always been places of hard work and long nights. In the deep woods of Minnesota and Wisconsin, lumber camps once stood surrounded by endless miles of pine and spruce. During the long winters, the days were spent felling trees and hauling timber through snow-covered forests. But when the sun disappeared behind the trees and the fires were lit inside the bunkhouses, another tradition took over: storytelling. Lumberjacks were famous for their tall tales. These stories passed the time during cold evenings and turned the dangers of the wilderness into legends that were equal parts frightening and humorous. Giant monstrous beasts, impossible weather, and strange creatures were said to lurk just beyond the edge of the firelight. One of the strangest of these creatures was a small animal that few people ever claimed to see clearly. Most heard it before they ever saw it. A strange, high-pitched sound echoing through the forest. A noise like water boiling in a teakettle. The creature responsible for that sound was known as the Teakettler, a cryptid of lumberjack folklore said to roam the forests of Minnesota and Wisconsin, leaving behind clouds of steam and a trail of confusion for anyone unlucky enough to encounter it. Only a handful of lumberjacks ever claimed to see one, and according to those who did, the creature had a very unusual habit. It walked backwards. Tonight, witches and wanderers, we're heading deep into the forests of North American folklore to explore one of the strangest creatures lumberjacks ever claimed to encounter: the mysterious Teakettler. Hello, and welcome back, witches and wanderers, to the Morbid Witch Podcast, where we explore myths, folklore, legends, and the strange creatures said to lurk in the forgotten corners of the world. Each episode we step into stories of ancient gods, wandering spirits, mysterious cryptids, and the legends that cultures have passed down through generations. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're a returning listener, it's always good to have you back. To all my witches and wanderers, thank you for being here. Before we step into tonight's strange story, just a quick reminder. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment, letting me know what myths, legends, or cryptids you'd like to hear about next. And if you're listening on Spotify, please take a moment to rate the show. It really helps more witches and wanderers find their way to the podcast. You can listen to the Morbid Witch Podcast on Spotify, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Pandora. So wherever you prefer to explore the strange and mysterious, the stories are waiting. Now, let's step into the snowy forests of the Northwoods. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the logging industry dominated huge portions of the northern United States. Lumber camps were scattered across the forests of Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan. The work was exhausting and often dangerous, and the men who lived in these camps spent months isolated from the outside world. In these conditions, storytelling became a kind of survival tool. Tall tales helped lumberjacks bond with each other and cope with the harsh environment around them. The forests were dark, unfamiliar places filled with strange sounds and shadows, and a good story could turn those fears into entertainment. Over time, an entire mythology of lumberjack creatures began to form. These creatures were often bizarre, exaggerated, and sometimes completely ridiculous. There were beasts with spinning heads, animals shaped like tools, and creatures whose behavior seemed deliberately designed to confuse anyone trying to hunt them. The Teakettler fit perfectly into this strange collection of Northwood cryptids. Unlike some lumberjack monsters that were enormous and terrifying, the Teakettler was said to be quite small. But what it lacked in size, it made up for in strangeness. Its name came from the sound it produced. A noise that echoed through the forest like a kettle left boiling on a stove. For lumberjacks working late or walking alone through the woods, that sound could be both eerie and unsettling. Because if you heard a kettle boiling in the middle of the forest, something strange was probably nearby. According to the few descriptions passed down through lumberjack stories, the teakettler was a small animal that looked somewhat like a woodland mammal, though its exact appearance was never clearly agreed upon. Some described it as resembling a small dog or raccoon. Others claimed it looked more like a squat rodent with thick fur and an oddly shaped snout. But nearly every description included one unmistakable feature: steam. The teakettler was said to release clouds of vapor from its nostrils, especially when it was startled or frightened. As the vapor escaped, it produced a shrill, whistling sound that closely resembled the sound of a boiling kettle. That strange noise is what gave the creature its name. Another unusual feature of the teakettler was the way it moved. Instead of walking forward like most animals, the creature preferred to walk backwards. This odd behavior confused anyone who tried to track it through the forest. Footprints would appear to move in the wrong direction, leading hunters away from the animal rather than toward it. Because of this habit, even experienced woodsmen found it nearly impossible to follow a teakettler's trail. It was as though the creature had evolved specifically to avoid being caught. Despite its strange reputation, very few lumberjacks ever claimed to see a teakettler clearly. Most encounters began the same way: a sound. Workers moving through the forest would suddenly hear a high-pitched whistling noise echoing between the trees. The sound would rise and fall like the whistle of a kettle on a stove. Sometimes the noise would seem distant. Other times it would appear to be very close. If someone followed the sound, they might briefly glimpse movement in the brush, a small creature darting between the trees, leaving behind a faint cloud of vapor. But before anyone could approach it, the teakettler would vanish. Some lumberjacks joked that the creature was deliberately playing tricks on them, leading them through the woods with its strange whistle before disappearing entirely. Others insisted the animal was simply shy and extremely difficult to approach. Whatever the truth, sightings were rare, and the mystery of the teakettler only grew with each retelling of the story. Before we continue deeper into the strange folklore of the Northwoods, let's pause for just a moment. To all my witches and wanderers listening tonight, thank you for being here. Whether you're relaxing at home, driving somewhere quiet, or listening late at night, I appreciate you spending your time with the podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. I love hearing from all of you and seeing which stories you want to explore next. And if you're listening on Spotify, please take a moment to rate the show. Those ratings really help more witches and wanderers discover the podcast. You can find the Morbid Witch Podcast on Spotify, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Pandora. Now, let's return to the forests of Minnesota and Wisconsin, and the strange creatures said to wander among the trees. Like many lumberjack tales, the story of the teakettler was probably never meant to be taken entirely seriously. These stories were part entertainment, part exaggeration, and part creative storytelling from men who spent long months living deep in the wilderness. But folklore often reveals something deeper about the people who create it. The teakettler may have served as a playful explanation for the strange noises that echo through northern forests during winter. Winds move through frozen branches, steam rising from warm breath in cold air, and the distant cries of animals can produce sounds that feel almost supernatural. In an environment where visibility was limited and the nights were long, it was easy for imagination to fill in the gaps. Tall tales also helped build a sense of identity among lumberjacks. Sharing stories about strange creatures became part of camp culture, a way to pass the time and strengthen bonds between workers. The teakettler became one more character in a larger mythology of Northwoods creatures that only lumberjacks truly understand. Even though the teakettler probably began as a humorous campfire story, it has become part of the rich folklore of North America. Cryptids like this remind us that storytelling has always been a way for people to make sense of the strange sounds and unexplained moments that happen in nature. Sometimes those stories are meant to frighten. Sometimes they are meant to entertain. And sometimes they exist simply because imagination thrives in places where the wilderness still feels mysterious. So the next time you hear a strange whistle echoing through a quiet forest, you might remember the lumberjacks of Minnesota and Wisconsin, and the strange little creature they believe wandered the woods, the one that walked backwards and sounded like a boiling kettle. Thank you for listening to the Morbid Witch Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you're following the show on Spotify, YouTube, iHeartRadio, or Pandora so you never miss a story. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. And if you're listening on Spotify, please take a moment to rate the podcast. It helps more witches and wanderers find their way here. Until next time, stay strange, stay spooky, and remember, the shadows are always watching.